This is Chris Johnson, founder of CreationLiberty Evangelism. His channel is CreationLiberty. He's a self-proclaimed biblical literalist who believes the King James Bible is scientifically and historically accurate, word for word. 6,000 years, Noah's Ark, the whole shebang. If it's in the Bible, he claims to believe it. Now, I wouldn't give a damn what he thinks, except he's been trying to push his beliefs as scientifically viable. Naturally, this means that scientific concepts like evolution must be false. Using what appear to be copy-and-pasted Kent Hovind arguments and some rather outlandish claims, such as the idea that evolution is, and I quote, a foundation of communism, Chris seeks to undermine a century of biological progress. Worse than that, it's painfully obvious that he gets his information from overtly creationist sources, most strikingly Kent Hovind. As such, he has a completely warped image of what evolution is. He goes so far as to proclaim on his website that evolution is a dangerous New Age religion that somehow infested the scientific community and is being taught to gullible children in light of real science. According to him, by which I mean Kent Hovind, there are 6 types of evolution: cosmic, chemical, stellar, organic, macro, and micro, only the last of which he claims is based in reality. Of course, the problem is that the theory of evolution has precisely nothing to do with the Big Bang or abiogenesis, and never did, since evolution is a theory of biology, whereas the Big Bang is to do with physics and cosmology, while abiogenesis is chemistry. How does Chris defend the idea that evolution is a religion? Let's give him a chance to explain himself. Here's an extract. In order for evolution to be coherent, it has to have a beginning. Most evolutionists are trying to separate the origins part of evolution from the rest of their theory, claiming it only applies after life has begun. However, logical inquiry must follow this path back to its roots. All life had to start somewhere. The evolutionists, in the past couple of decades, have backed off from pushing their entire theory because of the embarrassing position of having to explain the complexity of origins. First of all, Chris, you're aware that the theory of evolution predates the concepts of the Big Bang by decades, right? Darwin neither knew much about cosmology nor wrote about it in Origin of Species. Secondly, your argument strikes me as sounding a tad circular. You say it's a religion because it's an explanation for the universe, but when people explain that it isn't, you seem to basically say that it must be, otherwise it wouldn't be a religion. Either that, or you don't quite understand how science works. See, science generally doesn't fill in gaps without cause, unlike religions. It's possible to understand how something works, like the diversity of life, without knowing where the thing itself came from. Science explains things in increments as evidence becomes available, and how life began and how life evolved are 2 separate topics with separate explanations. Something can't descend with modification without having something to descend from, but how that first life came into being in no way affects whether or not it would then evolve. So if evolution was a religion, then not explaining where life came from would be a bit of a strange gap, but since even a layman's understanding of the difference between the different areas of science will demonstrate that evolution is merely a biological concept, its inability to explain life's origins in no way affects its validity, just as not explaining where atoms come from in no way affects the validity of atomic theory. Evolutionists, as you call them, aren't embarrassed to have to explain how life began, they're just aware that it's not as heavily evidenced as descent with modification. Not to mention that plenty of people readily accept evolution, but think life was created supernaturally, or even by aliens sometimes. But the site lists in great detail how all of the supposed evidence for evolution, along with a number of things entirely separate from evolution, is apparently false. Given how often the word lie comes up, I can only assume Chris is under the impression that evolution and all the other concepts which contradict a literal interpretation of the Bible are part of what must be the most long-lasting and complex conspiracy in recorded history, spanning the entirety of the scientific world, more or less, across various faiths, philosophies, and languages. Judging by the general quality of the information that Chris's videos and website contain, I personally find it far more likely that he simply needs to find better sources of information on the topic. I say this with the far from reliable Kent Hovind in mind, especially. Evolution and all the other subjects he mentioned are complicated ideas with decades of research behind them. It'll take more than the same old creationist pseudoscience to dismiss them, if I'm blunt. If you're watching this, Chris, I can assure you that this isn't part of the evolutionist conspiracy to discredit the Word of God. Far from being some New Age religion, evolution is the unifying theory of biology and has been for some time. Any amount of research from sources not designed to preach to the fundamentalist choir should demonstrate why it's considered such, because each discipline of biology confirms common ancestry independently. Remember also that evolution is both a fact and a theory, and the difference between the two is important. As for the Big Bang and abiogenesis, they're widely accepted as the best currently available explanations in terms of fitting the facts, but would be dismissed rather quickly if a better explanation came along. Unlike a lot of fundamentalist religious people, scientists are generally willing to challenge their ideas and replace them if more appropriate alternatives come along, including scientists who would call themselves Christians or any other number of religious things. If you'd prefer to believe a supernatural explanation, then good for you, but expect to receive criticism if you then challenge long-established scientific ideas without displaying even a basic understanding of them. That might also explain why so few people are willing to appear on your podcast. Good day. And if I might be so bold, assuming you're interested in learning more on the topic from slightly more reliable sources, allow me to recommend AronRa's informative video series, The 15 Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism, which explains in great detail a number of the common misconceptions relating to evolution and science in general. It's essential viewing as far as I'm concerned, for anyone willing to expand their knowledge.